There is a specific kind of morning that turns an ordinary forest into something that genuinely looks like it belongs in a storybook, when fog settles so thick between the trees that a cabin's roofline seems to simply dissolve into white, and the only thing announcing its presence is a single warm window glowing through the haze. Today I am taking you through 15 genuinely enchanting misty forest cabins, real settings where fog forms with almost reliable regularity, turning each one into something that feels less like architecture and more like a scene pulled directly from a fairy tale. Stay until the end because the final cabin on this list sits in conditions that create some of the most consistently dramatic fog displays found anywhere on Earth. Quick ask before we step into the fog. Before we head in, if misty, moody fairy tale forest scenes are your thing, go ahead and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this video reach more people. Subscribe if you want more atmospheric tours like this one, and let me know in the comments which misty cabin on this list felt the most magical to you. Let us step into the fog. Why fog actually forms the way it does. Before we walk through these 15 settings, it helps to understand the real science behind why fog forms so reliably in certain forests and not others, because that explanation makes every cabin on this list feel a little more grounded in genuine atmosphere rather than just lucky weather. Fog forms when air near the ground cools enough that it can no longer hold all the water vapor it contains, causing that excess moisture to condense into tiny suspended water droplets. Forests sitting in low valleys, near rivers and lakes, or along coastlines where warm and cool air masses regularly meet tend to produce fog far more consistently than drier, more exposed terrain, which is exactly why the locations on this list keep showing up again and again in fog photography and folklore alike. Cabin 1: The Black Forest Valley Cottage. We begin in Germany's Black Forest, a region whose very name has long been associated with dense, moody woodland and the fairy tales that grew directly out of it, including several stories collected by the Brothers Grimm. Cottages tucked into the lower valleys here regularly wake up surrounded by thick morning fog that settles among the dark, densely packed spruce trees, creating exactly the kind of shadowy, slightly mysterious atmosphere that inspired centuries of folklore in the first place. Cabin 2: The Appalachian Smoky Mountain Cabin. The Great Smoky Mountains earned their name directly from the natural fog and mist that rises consistently from the dense forest canopy, a result of moisture evaporating from millions of trees interacting with the region's particular temperature and humidity patterns. Small log cabins tucked into these hollows frequently wake up to that same smoky white haze drifting between ridgelines, occasionally thinning just enough to reveal a single distant peak before closing back in again. Cabin 3: The Scottish Highland Glen Cottage. In the glens of the Scottish Highlands, low-hanging mist regularly settles into valley floors while higher ground remains clear, creating a striking layered effect where a stone cottage might sit completely shrouded in fog while a nearby hillside stands in full sunlight just a short distance away. This specific microclimate pattern, common throughout much of the highlands, has fed centuries of local folklore involving mysterious figures and hidden paths that seem to appear and vanish with the shifting fog. Cabin 4: The Pacific Northwest Old Growth Cabin. Along the coastal forests of the Pacific Northwest, a near-constant cycle of marine fog rolling in from the ocean meets ancient old-growth trees draped in genuine hanging moss, creating one of the most reliably atmospheric misty forest settings anywhere in North America. Cabins built among these towering, centuries-old trees often experience fog so consistent through certain seasons that direct sunlight becomes something of a rare event rather than the daily norm. Cabin 5: The Bavarian Alpine Forest Lodge. Set at the base of the Bavarian Alps, this style of cabin frequently experiences a specific kind of fog that forms when cold air drains down from higher elevations overnight and pools in the forested valleys below, a phenomenon meteorologists refer to as a temperature inversion. The result by early morning is often a thick, low-lying fog bank that a hiker can walk directly down into from clear ground above, exactly the kind of dramatic visual threshold that feels genuinely transportive. Cabin 6: The Transylvanian Forest Cabin. Few regions carry quite as much fairy tale and folklore weight as Transylvania, where dense Carpathian forest and frequent, atmospheric fog have fed centuries of legend long before any specific famous story made the region globally known. Cabins tucked into these forests, particularly in the foothill regions where temperature inversions are common, regularly experience exactly the kind of slow-moving, ground-hugging mist that feels almost deliberately cinematic. Cabin 7: The Japanese Yakushima Rainforest Cabin. On the island of Yakushima in Japan, a uniquely wet, mossy temperate rainforest receives so much consistent rainfall and humidity that fog drifting between ancient cedar trees, some estimated to be well over 1,000 years old, has become one of the defining visual features of the entire island. This specific setting served as direct inspiration for animated forest scenes in Japanese cinema, a detail that has made misty cabin stays in this region particularly meaningful for visitors familiar with that cultural connection. Cabin 8, the New Zealand Fiordland Cabin. In the Fiordland region of New Zealand's South Island, among the wettest inhabited areas on the planet, fog and low cloud regularly settle into the dense temperate rainforest valleys between dramatic, steep-sided mountains. Cabins here often experience conditions where the surrounding peaks vanish entirely into cloud for days at a stretch, only to reappear suddenly and dramatically once the weather pattern finally shifts. Cabin 9, the French Brittany Forest Cottage. Along the coast of Brittany in northwestern France, a region already steeped in Arthurian legend and Celtic folklore, sea fog regularly drifts inland to settle among ancient oak forests, including areas long associated with legendary forest settings and medieval storytelling tradition. Stone cottages tucked into these woods experience a particular quality of soft, diffused light during foggy mornings that photographers have specifically sought out for decades. Cabin 10, the Norwegian Fjord Forest Cabin. Set among steep forested slopes above Norway's dramatic fjords, this cabin-style experiences fog forming through the interaction of cold fjord water and warmer surrounding air, often producing low cloud banks that cling specifically to the water's surface while leaving higher ground clear, then occasionally rising to swallow an entire hillside cabin within minutes as conditions shift. Cabin 11, the Costa Rican Cloud Forest Cabin. True cloud forests, a specific ecosystem that exists at certain tropical mountain elevations where persistent cloud cover essentially becomes a permanent rather than occasional feature, create some of the most reliably misty conditions found anywhere in the world. Cabins built within Costa Rica's cloud forest regions experience fog and mist as a near-constant backdrop rather than a special occasional occurrence, supporting an extraordinarily lush, moss and epiphyte-covered forest that looks genuinely otherworldly even on an objectively ordinary day. Cabin 12, the English Lake District Cottage. In England's Lake District, a region that has inspired centuries of romantic poetry and storytelling, fog regularly rises off the numerous lakes scattered throughout the landscape, drifting into the surrounding forested fells during cooler morning hours. Stone cottages here often look directly out over a lake that may be completely invisible beneath fog for the first several hours of the day, only gradually revealing itself as the sun eventually burns through. Cabin 13, the Canadian Maritime Forest Cabin. Along Canada's Atlantic coastline, cold ocean currents meeting warmer air create some of the foggiest conditions found anywhere in North America, with certain coastal stretches experiencing fog on a genuinely significant percentage of days throughout the year according to regional climate data. Cabins tucked into the forested areas just inland from this coast regularly experience that same dense marine fog drifting through the trees, softening every edge and muffling sound in a way that feels distinctly different from inland forest quiet. Cabin 14, the Chilean Patagonian Forest Cabin. In the southern reaches of Chilean Patagonia, fog forms readily where cold mountain air meets the region's notoriously moisture-laden weather systems, settling into ancient lenga and coihu forests that have grown largely undisturbed for centuries. The genuine remoteness of this region means misty mornings here go almost entirely unwitnessed by anyone beyond the rare visitor fortunate enough to actually be staying in one of the few cabins scattered throughout the area. Cabin 15, the Slovenian Alpine Forest Cabin. Topping the list is a cabin style set within Slovenia's densely forested alpine valleys, a region whose specific combination of mountain terrain, abundant forest cover and frequent temperature inversions produces some of the most consistently photographed misty forest conditions in Europe. Local meteorological patterns here regularly produce a phenomenon where fog fills an entire valley floor like a slow-moving lake while a cabin position just slightly higher up the surrounding slope remains in clear air, offering the genuinely surreal experience of looking down onto a sea of white cloud from above rather than being immersed within it, arguably the most fairy tale-inducing version of fog found anywhere on this entire list. Why this specific aesthetic has captured so much attention? Looking back across all 15 of these settings, it becomes clear why misty forest cabin content specifically has resonated so strongly across social media and travel content through 2025 and into 2026. Fog does something that clear weather simply cannot. It obscures just enough detail to invite the imagination to fill in the rest, which is precisely the same mechanism that has made fog and mist such a consistent feature across centuries of folklore and fairy tale tradition in nearly every culture represented on this list. A cabin glimpsed through fog feels less like a known, fully mapped structure and more like something half-discovered, which might be the single biggest reason this aesthetic continues capturing imaginations regardless of how many times people have already seen it. From the legend-soaked valleys of the Black Forest to a Slovenian cabin perched above a literal sea of cloud, These 15 misty forest settings prove that sometimes the most enchanting version of a place is not the one seen in full clarity, but the one half hidden in fog, leaving just enough room for a little fairy tale magic to slip in. If this tour gave you a few minutes of genuine wonder, subscribe for more atmospheric cabin and nature content just like this. Let me know in the comments which misty cabin felt the most magical to you, and I will see you in the next video.